It started with silence. The kind that fills a room when love has gone to sleep. My husband and I had grown used to it, used to empty dinners, quiet mornings, and conversations that felt like obligations. He was always somewhere else, even when he was home. Meetings, conferences, his phone lighting up more than his eyes ever did when he looked at me. I told myself this was normal, that this was marriage, that maybe I was too demanding, too emotional, too romantic. Then, out of nowhere, I saw him again.
The boy.
The one from long ago summers when everything smelled like grass and freedom. We were just kids then. He lived down the lane from my grandfather's old house. We'd share secrets under the porch, climb trees, fall off bikes, laugh until our stomachs hurt. Back then, he'd hold my hand like it meant something, even when we were only 10. I was visiting my grandfather's grave when I ran into him. He was older, more worn, but those eyes, they hadn't changed. He smiled like he remembered everything. We talked, awkward at first, but then the words spilled out like they'd been waiting. He told me he moved back, working as a local carpenter, simple things, honest work. I didn't want to leave. For a moment, I didn't feel like someone's wife. I felt like me. That night, I remembered something my grandfather once said. I was 16, crying over a boy who didn't love me back. He looked at me and said, "One day, you'll meet someone, and you'll feel the world tilt. Don't ignore it. If that boy makes you feel alive, go with him, even if the world says no." I didn't understand then. I do now. My husband came home late, kissed my cheek like he was clocking in. I asked him if he missed me. He said, "You know I've been busy." I didn't push. What was the point? The next day, the boy texted me. Just a simple coffee? I didn't even think. I said yes. Sitting across from him, I felt seen, like the version of me I thought was dead was blinking back to life. He remembered details I'd forgotten, how I used to hum when I was nervous, how I hated cinnamon in apple pie. My husband didn't know that. Or if he did, he forgot. When I got home, I lied. Said I was out with an old friend. Maybe I was. The truth bent a little that day, and I didn't feel bad. I felt curious. I felt something. I stood in front of the mirror that night, touching my own face, wondering when I'd stopped looking at myself with affection. The boy made me feel like I mattered again, like I wasn't fading into someone else's shadow. And somewhere deep inside, my grandfather's voice echoed again. Go with him. Was it advice? Or a warning? I wasn't sure. But I knew I'd already taken the first step. I started seeing him more often. Not planned, not official. Just often. We met at the park, in line at the cafe, once the old bookstore where I used to spend hours as a teenager. Each meeting felt unspoken, natural, like we both needed something neither of us had dared to name. I told myself they were coincidences. But coincidences don't feel like anticipation. The conversations changed. We stopped talking about the past and started talking about now. He asked questions no one else bothered to ask anymore. How I was sleeping. What made me smile lately. If I still painted. I didn't have answers. My world had narrowed to a checklist. Dinner, laundry, deadlines, silence. But he waited, listened, like my answers mattered. One evening, he reached for a leaf stuck in my hair, and for a second, his fingers brushed my cheek. I felt it everywhere. That tiny touch echoed through my entire body. I stepped back. He didn't apologize, didn't press. He just looked at me like he knew I felt it too. I started checking my phone more, waiting for his name to appear. When it did, I smiled like a teenager. I told myself it was harmless. Emotional closeness isn't cheating, right? But I also started hiding my phone screen, deleting messages, changing his name in my contacts to something neutral. That's when I knew I was already crossing lines. My husband didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to ask. We hadn't touched in weeks. We slept beside each other like strangers. He asked how my day was only when distracted. I stopped expecting more. I stopped wanting to explain my loneliness to someone who didn't see it. The boy, on the other hand, noticed everything. He noticed when I wore a new sweater, when I cut my hair, when I seemed tired. He asked about the things I stopped saying aloud, like my dreams of traveling, my unfinished novel, the way I used to imagine my life turning out. He remembered. It scared me how easy it became to share my thoughts with him, to find comfort in someone else's smile, to crave it. One night, we talked for hours, sitting in his car outside my house. No one made a move, but the silence between us buzzed with something dangerous. When he looked at me, I saw hesitation, respect maybe, or restraint, but also a question. I didn't answer it. I went inside, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, my husband was already gone, a note on the table about meetings and a late dinner. I stared at it, then threw it away. That afternoon, I went back to the cafe. He was there, waiting, not surprised. We didn't talk much that day, but when I reached for my coffee and our hands touched, I didn't move away. Neither did he, and that was all it took. The shift had already happened. We both knew it. It happened on a Tuesday. It wasn't planned. There wasn't some grand build-up or dramatic moment. I was at his place, returning a book he'd lent me, and we were talking. Nothing unusual. Then, everything changed. One look too long. One breath too close. And suddenly, we were no longer pretending. His hands didn't ask. They remembered. My body answered before my mind could object. There was no guilt in the moment. Only heat, silence, breath, and the sharp edge of wanting something that had been buried for too long. I didn't think of my husband. I didn't think of right or wrong. I only thought of how long I had been numb and how alive I felt now. After, we didn't speak for a while. He sat beside me, our shoulders touching, not asking for promises or explanations. I wanted to cry, but not because I regretted it. I wanted to cry because I finally felt something that wasn't dull or forced. I didn't belong to myself before that moment. I did now. I went home with his scent still on me. My husband was already there, eating takeout in front of the TV. He asked where I'd been, casually, not looking up. I lied. Easily. That scared me. Not that I lied, but how natural it felt. I was becoming someone I never thought I'd be. And part of me liked it. The boy texted me later that night. Just one line. I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was too heavy to type. Too messy to explain. I wasn't okay. I was changing, unraveling, breaking rules I used to believe in. Over the next few days, I kept my distance. From him. From myself. But it didn't last. We saw each other again and again. It wasn't just sex. It was quiet understanding. Hands held too long. Forehead kisses that said more than words ever could. It was comfort in stolen time. Then my husband found the earring. He held it out, quiet, his eyes calm in a terrifying way. This isn't yours, he said. I didn't lie. I didn't try to. I just stood there. He didn't yell. He didn't ask who. He just nodded, like he'd been expecting this. Maybe he had. Maybe we both knew it was coming. He left for a few days after that. No contact. I didn't chase him. I spent those days in silence, replaying every choice, every look, every breath that led me here. I saw the boy once during that time. He didn't ask for anything. He just looked at me like he already knew I was slipping away from both of them. When my husband returned, he didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked what I wanted. And for the first time, I didn't know how to answer. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about waking up after years of pretending to be asleep. And once you're awake, you can't go back to dreaming. I didn't speak for 2 days. Not to my husband. Not to him. I needed the silence to hear myself think. Everything I built was cracked now. Not just my marriage, but my identity. I had spent so long being who I was supposed to be, I had no idea who I actually was anymore. My husband asked again, softer this time. Do you love him? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't sure it mattered. Love wasn't the point. I had crossed a line. We both had. But the betrayal didn't start in bed. It started years ago, when we stopped seeing each other. When our home turned into a waiting room. The boy didn't reach out. Maybe he thought I needed space. Maybe he knew this wasn't his moment. He was never the villain. He didn't chase me. He didn't beg. He just showed up when I needed a mirror. I stood in front of the closet, looking at my life in rows of carefully ironed clothes. I realized how much of me was stitched into routines, how often I said yes to keep the peace, how often I said nothing to avoid being too much. I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. My husband made a choice for both of us. He packed a bag. He said he'd stay with a friend. I don't hate you, he said. But I can't be here if you don't want to be. He closed the door behind him. That was the first honest sentence between us in months. I didn't go to the boy right away. I needed to be alone, fully, not in between people, not trying to soften the fall. I walked through places that used to matter. My old school, the riverbank where I first kissed someone, the library where I once dreamed of writing. I remembered the girl I used to be. She wasn't innocent, but she was honest. She never begged for love. When I finally saw him again, it was quiet. He looked at me like a question he didn't want to ask. I didn't give him promises. I told him the truth. That I had broken something to find something else. That I wasn't ready for another cage, even a kinder one. He didn't flinch. He said, I didn't want to save you. I just wanted you to see yourself again. That night, I sat on my porch alone. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's wife or someone's secret. I felt like me. Whole. Flawed. Awake. Maybe I'll love again. Maybe I won't. But I'll never forget what my grandfather said. Go with him. It wasn't about a boy. It was about a choice. A moment where your heart whispers something your life doesn't want to hear. I went with that whisper. And in doing so, I didn't just leave a man. I returned to myself.